Hey, welcome to my Warframes Where They Are Now series, a little series I've had brewing in the back of my mind since the early days of Warframe, quote unquote. I'm going to put this little intro at the beginning of every video in this series. If you've heard this once or more, feel free to skip it. This is just my opinion and is not guaranteed to be fact. Remember, with Warframe, everyone plays at least a little different from each other. That's why there's 52 frames as of making this intro. Of course. That being said, I do plan on being as objective as I can with this series. But bias will always be a potential problem, and will definitely shine through in certain episodes, if not all. Now, that being said, I hope you enjoy the series. November 1st, 2023. Today we're talking about Hydroid after his rework. I've been looking forward to this, but I wanted to give it some time to make sure they didn't, adjust anything that I wasn't prepared to see. Well, let's get right into it, shall we? Base stats on level 30 Hydroid Prime are 290 armor, 225 energy, 370 health, 650 shields, and 1.05 sprint speed. His passive is enemies that are dealt damage by him are more vulnerable to corrosive damage, while the first status reduces armor by 50%. This is actually pretty nasty, considering the rest of his kit does corrosive damage. So, well done in making that passive do something nice. Before we even get into this, I'd like to say that all of his abilities are a bit different than they used to be, which is the main reason why I'm covering them all again, as though I hadn't before. This is the first time I've had to go back and talk about a frame again, so it's a bit of a new territory for me, but I'll do my best. His first ability is Tempest Barrage. It rains down what appear to be cannonballs upon the enemies. It also staggers them in place instead of knocking them around, which is fucking awesome. And it does corrosive damage, which is also quite nice, especially given how his passive works. As for the augment, which is Viral Tempest, each projectile has a 100% chance to inflict viral damage, which allows him to set it for statuses pretty well. Matter of fact, the way I'm running mine right now is I'm running mine as a sort of status machine, because I finally got my ceramic dagger in Karnan. His second ability is Tidal Surge. He becomes a wave and drags enemies with him to wherever he ends up. Honestly, I'm not a fan of this one. I will say it's a hell of a lot better than it used to be, but it's still not my thing. I'm not a big fan of that. But it does have an augment, Tidal Impunity, and that is clear status effects and grants 12 seconds of status immunity on yourself and allies that come in contact with the wave. It reduces Tidal Surge's energy cost to 15. This is nice in odd situations. I personally don't run it, mainly because I typically play solo anyway, and given how I'm planning on putting the Archon Shards on Hydroid, I don't think I'll have any issue with needing status immunity. But it is nice that it's an option. So his new third ability is Plunder. Yeah, they got rid of the puddle, sadly. Granted, I only liked it for the meme status, and this is a hell of a lot better. So Plunder allows you to steal armor from enemies, and you also get increased damage per enemy you hit with it. And enemies that are afflicted with corrosive status offer a greater increase, which is nice, because it synergizes really well with the rest of his kit. They actually did really good with the synergy on this guy. But the way I see it is it's kind of like a bit of a weaker Vex armor, which is not necessarily a bad thing, especially considering the trade-off is you don't have to take damage to get it to work. And considering he has a lot of other stuff going on, I kind of get it. I love it to pieces, and the armor buff by itself is really nice. I don't even have fucking Steel Fiber or Adaptation on my Hydroid because of it. Granted, yes, I do have armor shards, and we'll get into that later, but I'm a really big fan of this ability. As for the augment, Rousing Plunder, Plunder gains 50% max corrosive damage armor, and heals allies within affinity range for 50 health. It's alright. I will say it's kind of interesting that you can turn your pirate into a healer. I'm not against this, but it's neat that it's there. So his fourth ability is Tentacle Swarm, and the way they changed this one is rather than flailing enemies around, it just kind of holds them in place. It's kind of a simple change, but it's nice. They also do corrosive damage to the enemies, which is also really nice, but other than that, yeah, it hasn't changed a whole lot. It's nice for, getting headshots for your Incarnons, of course, and it's also nice that you don't have to even try to fucking hit them when they're going all over the place. As for the augment, Pilfering Swarm, as you probably recall, it's just a loot increase, 100% chance to drop additional loot. It's nice for farming. I personally don't mess with it because I like my Necros for that stuff, but it's cool that that's still an option, and with the way Hydroid is now, I wouldn't blame anyone that decided to do this. As for my build, I I definitely have a mixed build. I actually have a pretty high stat on everything, surprisingly, except for efficiency. I'm planning on running some more Archon shards on him, of course. I already have 2 armor shards as it stands. I'm debating whether to put a 3rd one on him or not. I probably won't, because he handles pretty well on Steel Path without the 3rd one. Other than that, the rest of them are going to be in strength. Just because why not? I already have 90% range and 50% or 150% duration's plenty with how I run my hydroid. At least for me, I don't mind having to recast. I do have Archon Flow on him because I do have Thermal Sunder in a 2nd ability slot. So getting the ice damage procs for Archon Flow is, I mean, why not? I already have the space for it. But yeah, no, it's pretty simple, but I did have to reform him when he came out. Or the rework came out, I should say. So how does he fare in Deviri? Well, he is a fucking blast to play with regular Deviri content, unsurprisingly. With his mass area coverage, with his 1st and 4th abilities, at least with my build, because I have 190% range, it's a lot of fun to just kind of drop it there and not have to worry about anything for that duration. As for Steel Path Deviri, he does fairly well, and that's the only reason why I'm considering putting a 3rd armor shard on him, to be honest. He fares really well with regular Steel Path stuff, however with Steel Path Deviri, because of how fast it scales, he does get outpaced after a while. I will concede that for sure. But the 3rd ability does help quite a bit with Deviri, especially considering it's even easier to get energy in Deviri than it is outside of it, even with my setup. So honestly, I don't know. I'm not sure what to do with that, but he does handle pretty well, and he's a lot of fun. And overall, I'd say that they did amazing with the Hydroid rework. He went from a frame that I thought was rather abysmal to now a frame that is in my top 5. Like, they really did do a stellar job on the rework, if you ask me. I am curious to see what you all think in the comments, though, and feel free to talk about it civilly. But yeah, no, like, seriously, I'm looking forward to that. I'm also hoping that they do something similar to an Aros. And, I mean, hey, this gives me hope that they could actually make an Aros really goddamn amazing. So, that's it, and that's all. Thank you all for watching, and have yourselves a great one.